The alarm did not scream. It whispered. Aron Voss heard it inside his helmet first, a soft warning tone that meant something was wrong but not yet lost. The air around him was thick with gray dust, drifting like slow snow across broken stone. His boots stood on cracked ground that still glowed faint red from heat below. This world was not friendly. None of them were supposed to stay long. Ahead, the ruins leaned like tired bones. Old towers of black crystal rose and fell, shattered by time and war. The human convoy had stopped here only to scan and leave. That was the plan. The plan was already dead. Energy fire cut through the dust. One of the scout drones fell from the sky and shattered beside Aron, sparks jumping across the ground. Voices shouted over the comms, sharp and fast. Someone yelled retreat. Someone else screamed. Aron turned, raising his rifle, but then he heard something else. A sound too small for the battlefield. A cry. It was thin and broken, full of fear. Not human. Aron froze for half a second. The sound came again, closer now, from the ruins to his left. He should move back. Orders were clear. This was not a rescue mission. The local species were unknown, marked as hostile by default. Another blast shook the ground. Stone fell from above. The cry came again. Aron swore under his breath and ran. He moved through the broken entrance of a fallen structure, dust filling his visor. Inside, the heat was lower. The light was dim. His scanner flickered, unable to lock onto targets. Something small moved ahead. He found it trapped under a slab of crystal rock, its small body pinned but alive. Scales the color of dull blue glass caught the weak light. Tiny wings twitched uselessly. Its eyes were wide, glowing softly, filled with panic. A dragon child. Aron's breath caught. He had seen dragonkind only from a distance. Massive. Dangerous. Feared across systems. But this one was small, barely larger than a human child. It trembled as it saw him, fear sharp and raw. "I won't hurt you," Aron said quietly, knowing it could not understand his words. His voice still mattered. He lowered his weapon and stepped closer. The ground shook again. Aron lifted the slab with a grunt, muscles burning. The child cried out as it was freed, then collapsed against him, weak and shaking. Its heat bled through his armor, warm and alive. Then the air changed. Aron felt it before he saw them. 5 figures stepped into the ruin, tall and sharp, armored in dark metal that drank the light. Their blades hummed with blue energy. Their faces were hidden behind narrow helms. These were not wild creatures. These were trained killers. They saw the child in Aron's arms. One of them raised a blade. Aron moved without thinking. He turned his back to the attackers and wrapped his body around the dragon child, pulling it close to his chest. He crouched low, making himself a shield. His armor locked, alarm screaming now. The first blade struck. It cut through his shoulder, burning hot, tearing flesh. Pain exploded through him. Aron bit down hard to stop himself from shouting. The second blade hit his side. His armor failed there. Blood spilled warm and fast. The dragon child cried again, louder now, claws gripping Aron's suit. The third blade punched through his back. His legs almost gave out. Aron forced himself to stay upright. The fourth blade struck low, ripping through his thigh. His vision blurred. Red warnings filled his visor. Systems failing. Blood loss critical. The fifth blade came down hard. It pierced his chest. The world slowed. Aron fell to one knee, then both. He could feel his heartbeat stumbling, weak and uneven. His breath came short. Each inhale burned. Still he did not let go. He lowered himself fully to the ground, curling around the child. His arms shook but stayed locked. His body took the weight. His armor cracked and smoked. The attackers paused. One of them tilted its head, confused. Humans were supposed to run. Humans were supposed to beg. This one did neither. Heavy shadows fell across the ruin. The air vibrated with deep power. A sound rolled through the stone, low and ancient, like a mountain waking from sleep. The attackers turned. Too late. Massive forms descended from the sky, wings spreading wide, blocking the light. Scales like molten gold and dark iron filled the ruin. Eyes burned with ancient fire. Dragon guardians. One strike. Then another. The attackers were gone in seconds, erased like dust in a storm. Silence followed. Aron barely felt it. He lay on the ground, blood pooling beneath him, vision fading. The dragon child was still pressed to his chest, alive. That knowledge was enough. A massive dragon lowered its head, eyes fixed on Aron. It did not speak. It did not need to. It had seen everything. The wounds. The blades. The choice. Aron's breathing slowed. His thoughts drifted. He felt cold now. He reached up weakly and touched the dragon child's head just once. "You're safe," he whispered. Then the world went dark. Aaron opened his eyes to a light that was soft but alive. It was not the weak glow of emergency lamps or the harsh fire of battle. It shimmered like liquid crystal, flowing over walls that curved and bent, alive and moving. The air smelled clean, faintly sweet and warm. He tried to sit. His body screamed. Every limb hurt as if he had been torn apart and put back together wrong. For a moment he could not remember where he was. Then he saw them. Towering figures around him, taller than any human, scaled and armored, each one radiating power that pressed on his mind. They moved with purpose but without threat. Eyes like molten gold and deep blue watched him closely. Aaron's breath caught in his throat. "Where?" he tried to ask. His voice was weak, rasping. His mouth felt dry and heavy. No answer came, but the figures did not attack. Instead, one stepped forward, wings folding behind it, claws tucked neatly. Its face was hidden under a smooth, dark crest. It studied him, tilting its head slightly. Aaron realized he was not in any human place he knew. He was somewhere else, somewhere alive, almost sacred. He tried to stand. Pain tore through him. He collapsed back. A strange warmth spread through his body, starting at the chest where the blades had pierced him. He watched in disbelief as the wounds closed before his eyes, skin knitting, armor repairing itself as if the place was alive. He felt every part of him reforming, bone, muscle, blood, until his breathing slowed and pain became dull and bearable. The dragon child Caliph was there too. It sat beside him, small wings trembling, eyes wide. It had followed him even here, pressing close. Aaron touched its head, feeling heat and life, the same warmth that had guided him before. A massive voice echoed, not in words but in feeling. Aaron could hear it in his mind, deep and slow like a drum that shook his chest. He understood a thought more than a sentence. "We watched. You risked everything. You survived what no human should survive." The guardians spoke to each other in silence, their thoughts brushing across Aaron's mind. Confusion, wonder, debate. He realized they were discussing him. Humans were fragile. Short-lived. Weak. They were not meant to endure blades or survive wounds meant to kill dragons. Yet here he was. Alive. One of the guardians bent closer. It touched him lightly with a claw that burned with soft heat. Aaron flinched, expecting pain. Nothing came. The creature's thought brushed against him gently. "You are changed now. You will carry what we cannot give. Your choice saved another life. That is worth more than strength." Aaron could not understand all of it, but he felt it. Every part of him, human fear, human stubbornness, human hope, was seen, measured, and acknowledged. The guardians had not just healed him. They had bound him to something greater, something old, something alive in the very bones of this world. He tried to move again. His body felt heavier but stronger. The strength was not like training or armor. It was something else. Something that came from surviving when death had been certain. His senses sharpened. He could hear the faint pulse of Calith's heart. He could feel the vibrations of the room as if it were breathing. He could sense the guardian's presence even when he could not see them. Caliph looked up at him, eyes full of fear and trust. Aaron's heart clenched. He had saved the child once, and now it had saved him in return by needing him. He reached down and brushed a claw across its small face. The dragon child shivered and pressed closer. Time passed differently there. Aaron could not tell if hours or minutes had gone by. The guardians observed him without interruption, without judgment. Their presence was both comforting and overwhelming. They were creatures humans called legends, yet here he stood among them, not as prey, not as enemy, but as something in between. One of the guardians finally spoke in words Aaron could understand. The voice was low, soft, yet full of weight. "You have survived what should have ended you. You acted without thought of yourself. That is rare, even among dragons. Your heart is unusual." Aaron swallowed. Weak words came. I only protected it. The child." The guardian's eyes softened, though its form remained massive and imposing. "And yet that is enough. That is everything." He realized slowly what had happened. The blades, the wounds, the collapse, those should have killed him. But he was not dead. Not completely. He had crossed something he could not name, moved through a moment between life and death, and arrived here. This place, these guardians had chosen to bring him back. Aaron touched his chest where the last blade had struck. No pain remained. Only warmth and a pulse he could feel in his bones. He breathed deeply. For the first time in hours he felt more than fear. He felt possibility. Caliph nuzzled his arm. Its soft heat reminded him of what he had risked everything for. The child had survived. And he had survived because of something he could not yet understand, because of forces older and wiser than any human had ever known. The guardian stepped back slightly, giving him space. The largest among them stretched its wings slowly, a gesture of acknowledgement, perhaps respect. Aaron knew instinctively that he had passed some test. Not a test of strength, not a test of skill, but a test of spirit. He sat up fully, supporting himself on his hands. The dragon child clung to him, shaking but alive. He looked around the chamber at the living crystal walls, the flowing light, the figures watching silently. He did not know what this place was called or what would happen next. But he knew one thing. He had survived blades that should have killed him. He had woken among beings humanity called legends. And somehow, some impossible way, he had earned their attention. For the first time in his life, Aaron felt that being human, being fragile, could be enough. Not because of what he could do, but because of what he chose to do when everything told him to run. He looked at Caliph. The child's small face mirrored awe and trust. Aaron took a deep breath, steadying himself. Somehow, against impossible odds, they had both survived. And now, whatever waited beyond this light, he was ready to face it. The chamber hummed softly, alive with power. The guardians watched silently. Aaron Voss, the human who should have died, had awakened beyond death. And the dragon child was still in his arms. A new story had begun. Aaron did not know how long he had been in the chamber of the guardians. Time seemed strange here, moving slowly yet filled with weight. The dragon child, Caliph, had curled against him, sleeping lightly, safe for the first time. The guardians had stepped back, but their eyes never left him. Every movement, every breath he took was measured, studied, judged. Then the chamber shifted. The light pulsed, the walls moving like living veins. A platform rose beneath him, and he was lifted gently as if by invisible hands. The guardians followed him, surrounding the space with a silent presence that pressed on his mind. At the top, he faced a circle of figures larger than any dragon he had seen in his life, seated with authority. Their eyes burned with centuries of knowledge and power. Aaron felt small, human in every sense, yet he was expected to stand. "You survive," said one of the largest, voice rolling through his mind rather than through sound. It was not cruel, not angry, but heavy, as if carrying the weight of judgment itself. "Few humans would. Fewer would act as you did. Explain yourself." Aaron's throat felt tight. Words seemed small and weak compared to the weight of those eyes, yet he found himself speaking. I only protected the child. I could not leave it. I could not let it die." The guardians exchanged silent thoughts. Their forms shifted slightly, wings brushing the air. Aaron realized they were sharing his memory, feeling what he had felt. Every heartbeat, every shiver of pain, every choice he had made, the guardians could see it all. "You faced 5 blades," said another voice like stone cracking. "Your body should have failed. Yet you endured. Why?" Aaron swallowed hard. The memory of the attack flashed through his mind. The fire, the steel, the heat of energy blades cutting into him, the desperate weight of the child pressed to his chest. He had thought he would die. He had thought it was impossible to survive. And yet he had. I do not know," he admitted, voice trembling. I could not let it die. I did not think about myself. I only thought about keeping it safe." The guardians were silent, but Aaron felt their awareness pressing closer. He did not flinch. He did not hide the truth. He let them see everything, the fear, the pain, the choice. Finally, one of them leaned forward, massive head lowering, eyes glowing gold. "You are different from your kind," it said. "Humans are weak, short-lived, fragile. Yet you endured where even dragons would have fallen. You acted without reward, without hope, without thought of self." Aaron shook his head slowly. I was not thinking about being strong. I was just doing what was right." The largest guardian rose fully, wings unfurling. They filled the chamber, casting shadows over Aaron and the child. The air trembled with energy, yet there was no threat. "And that is why you are here," it said. "Not for your strength, not for your skill, but for your will. Your choice proves your spirit. It is rare, even among dragons, to act so purely." Aaron felt awe, but also a quiet fear. He was human, still fragile, still mortal. And yet, he had been measured by creatures of legend and found worthy. The chamber shifted again. Around him, images formed, shimmering and alive. They were memories of his life: childhood, family, training, failures, moments of small courage. He saw them not just as pictures but as living truths, his experiences laid bare before the guardians. Every time he had chosen right over safety, he felt it ripple across the room. Every act of stubborn hope, every moment he had refused to yield, became visible. Arin's throat tightened. The guardians did not speak. They did not need to. Their judgment was in their attention, in the way they regarded him, in the quiet weight of their presence. Then the images shifted. The moment of the attack. The 5 blades. The fear in Kalitha's eyes. His own pain, every slice and burn. Every decision. Every heartbeat he had risked. Every moment he had survived. "You risked everything," said a voice deep and slow. "Not for power. Not for glory. Not even for duty. But for another life. That is the greatest act a being can perform." Arin's hands trembled. He looked down at Kalith, still asleep. The child's small chest rose and fell gently. It mattered," he whispered. "I could not let it die." The guardian studied him longer. Then one stepped back, wings folding neatly, a gesture of acknowledgement. "You may refuse reward," it said, voice both calm and commanding. "You may refuse power. But know this, the choice you made marks you. Your spirit has changed the balance of our judgment. You are seen." Arin did not fully understand, but he felt the truth of it. For the first time he realized that being human, being fragile, could carry meaning beyond strength or weapon. That the act of choice, of courage, of standing when all else tells you to fall, could matter in ways larger than life. One more test remained. The guardians projected a vision before him. Enemies approaching, dragons fighting, Kalith in danger again. Arin could have walked away. He could have allowed the scene to play out as history had written it. But he did not flinch. He saw the child, small and trusting, and he reached toward the danger, ready to act, ready to protect. The vision faded. The chamber was silent, filled with the low hum of ancient power. The guardians spoke together in unison, their thoughts flowing into his mind as one. "Your spirit is true. Your choice is what makes you worthy. You are not merely human. You are witness, protector, and example. From this day forward, your will binds you to what is greater than yourself." Arin felt warmth spread through him, not from healing or power, but from understanding. He had passed the judgment. Not by fighting, not by strength, not by cunning, but by the simple, unwavering choice to protect another, even at the cost of his own life. He looked down at Kalith. The child stirred, sensing him awake. Arin reached out, letting fingers brush scales softly. The warmth, the life, the trust between them, everything he had fought for, was real. The guardians stepped back fully now. They did not leave, but they allowed him space. Their presence was heavy, yet not threatening. They were witnesses to something rare. Something new. Arin realized then, slowly and fully, that being seen by them, being judged and found worthy, was not the end. It was the beginning. The human who should have died had endured. The choice he made would ripple through the dragon kingdoms, perhaps through the galaxy itself. And for the first time, Arin understood that strength was not just in muscle or weapon. It was in the will. In the courage to act when all else screamed to fall. In the quiet heartbeat that chooses life even for another, above all else. Kalith blinked, small eyes meeting his. Arin smiled faintly. Whatever came next, he would face it. Not alone, but as protector. As human. As witness. The judgment was over. The story was just beginning. Arin woke to a world that felt larger than before. The chamber of the guardians had faded behind him, replaced by open skies and endless horizons of floating crystal spires. Kalith clung to his side, small but steady, wings folding and unfolding nervously. He could still feel the presence of the guardians, a constant awareness pressing softly against his mind. They had not left him. They were watching, waiting, testing, but in a different way now. Arin had learned that his survival, his choice to protect Kalith, had changed something. Not just for himself, but for humans. Dragons who once saw humans as fragile and weak now looked at him differently. Rumors traveled faster than the stars themselves. The human who had survived 5 blades for a dragon child had awakened among the guardians and returned. That alone was impossible. That alone made him extraordinary. Soon, dragons of all ranks came to see him. Young warriors, curious and skeptical, approached the human with caution. Arin did not raise a weapon. He did not show off or demand respect. He simply stood, arms relaxed, presence calm. His body still bore faint scars, faint reminders of what had almost ended him. But his eyes, steady and clear, held something stronger, courage. A dragon warrior, scales like polished bronze, stepped forward and tested him. "You call yourself human. You have no claws. You have no fire. Why should we trust you in battle?" Arin looked at the dragon, breathing steady. He did not flinch, though his heart raced. "Because I will stand. When the choice is to protect or to run, I will stand. That is enough. A ripple went through the crowd of dragons. Some laughed quietly, doubting him. Some narrowed their eyes, unsure. And some, those who had seen legends of courage themselves, felt respect stir. It did not take long for his first test to arrive. Reports came from nearby sectors. Raiders from the outer worlds had attacked dragon caravans, destroying ships and taking prisoners. The Guardians expected action. Normally only dragons led the charge. But Aran was called to join. Not as a soldier. Not as a commander. As a witness and participant, a human among legends. The battlefield was chaos. Ships of fire and steel clashed in the sky. Energy blasts lit the dark clouds, casting shadows like ghosts. Dragons dove and rose, weaving through enemy lines. Aran ran beside Caliph, who clung to him like a beacon of trust. The enemies did not know him. They assumed he was just a human, fragile and easy to kill. They were wrong. Aran did not have claws or fire, but he had courage. He led small groups through dangerous zones, warning dragons of ambushes, carrying wounded, standing in the open to shield the weak. Time and again he refused to fall despite being struck, scorched and slammed. Every moment of survival inspired the dragons around him. Caliph followed, learning from Aran. The child had grown stronger, more confident. Wings flapped with skill, claws struck with precision, but always under Aran's guidance. The bond between them was unspoken but clear. One had risked everything for the other. Now, together they taught dragons something new, that strength could be more than fire or scales, it could be the courage to stand for what mattered. After the battle, the dragons did something unprecedented. The Guardians themselves gathered around Aran. They did not grant him titles of war. They did not make him a leader. But they gave him a new name, Honor-Bound. It was a title reserved for the greatest dragons, those who protected the future of the species, those whose choices shaped history. And now, for the first time, a human held it. Whispers spread across dragon space. Some were awed. Some were angry. How could a human, so small and fragile, rise among the strongest warriors of the galaxy? Yet there was no question. Aran had proven himself not with fire or claws but with will. With choice. With courage. He spent the following weeks training with the Guardians not to fight but to learn. They taught him the ways dragons measured space, time, and energy. They showed him how to read enemy movements before they happened, how to sense danger in ways humans could not yet understand. Aran absorbed it all, not for glory but to protect Caliph, to stand when others could not. Stories of Aran's deeds spread across the kingdoms. Young dragons told them in whispers. Older dragons debated them. Human colonies nearby began to hear rumors. The fragile human who could walk with dragons, survive death, and lead in courage. Aran became a symbol of possibility. A reminder that even the smallest life could shift the course of the greatest empires. Caliph, now confident and strong, stayed close. The child learned to fight, to fly, to trust, but always with the lesson that courage mattered more than strength. When dragons questioned their young charge, Caliph would answer simply, "I survive because he stands." Enemies tested them. Human raiders, alien mercenaries, even rogue dragons attempted to challenge the unlikely pair. Every time, Aran acted with the same steady resolve. He did not win through power. He won by refusing to fall. He survived because he had no other choice, and in that survival he inspired those around him. The Guardians watched from afar, silent and proud. They had brought him into their world not to fight, not to conquer, but to witness. And Aran did more than witness. He became a bridge. A human who reminded dragons that courage was not limited by species, size, or firepower. By the time Aran stood atop a cliff overlooking a battle-scarred valley, Caliph at his side, he was no longer just a human among dragons. He was honor-bound, a living example that choice, courage, and will could rise above any limitation. He looked at the horizon. Ships moved across the sky, dragons patrolling, humans assisting. The kingdom was not perfect. Danger still lurked. But for the first time, dragons and humans stood together, bound by respect rather than fear. Aran reached down, touching Caliph's head gently. "We've only just begun," he said. The child chirped softly, eyes bright. Together they faced the skies. In dragon space, the rise of the human guardian had begun. A human who had once fallen beneath 5 blades now stood among the greatest, not as a weapon, not as a conqueror, but as proof that courage could change everything. The story of Aran Voss and Caliph would be told for generations, not for the fire they wielded, but for the courage that refused to break. And in that courage dragons and humans would find a new way forward together. Years passed, Yet Arun Vos did not grow older in the way humans usually did. His scars remained, reminders of the 5 blades that had almost ended him, but his presence had changed something deeper than flesh. He stood among the guardians and dragons, no longer a stranger, no longer weak. The stories of his courage had spread across the kingdoms like wind across the skies. Even the youngest dragons learned his name, whispered in awe, the human who survived death and stood for another. Kalith, now taller and stronger, often perched beside him. The dragon child had grown into a warrior in miniature, learning lessons not from fear but from example. Every flap of wings, every strike of claw, carried the echo of Arun's choice, to protect, to endure, to stand. Together they were a symbol not of strength but of hope. One day a messenger arrived, wings beating fast, scales glinting in the sunlight. Arun read the urgency before the message was spoken. A band of raiders had attacked a border outpost. Humans, dragons, even mixed crews of both had been caught unprepared. Without hesitation, Arun gathered what allies he could, dragons, guardians and human soldiers, and took to the skies. The battle was fierce. Fire streaked across the clouds. Explosions rattled the floating spires. The enemy believed that humans could not survive in such chaos. They were wrong. Arun led, not with firepower but with presence. His decisions were precise. He warned dragons of ambushes, guided humans to cover, and moved where the danger was greatest. Several times he was struck, thrown against ships or scorched by plasma blasts. Yet he rose again each time, refusing to yield. Kalith followed, small but swift, striking with accuracy and bravery. After the battle, Arun did not celebrate. He checked the wounded, reassured the frightened, and stayed until the last danger had passed. Dragons who had once doubted him now bowed heads in respect. Humans who had feared dragons now stood shoulder to shoulder with them. Arun's courage had created more than victory, it had created trust. Later, in the halls of the Guardians, a council gathered. Arun was called forward, Kalith by his side. The Guardians, ancient and towering, regarded him not as human, not as small, but as a being whose choices had altered their understanding. "You have done what few could," said one voice deep and resonant. "Not through strength, not through power, not through conquest. Through courage, through choice, through will. That is why you are remembered." Arun bowed his head, understanding their words in a way he had not before. He had not sought fame. He had not sought honor. He had only acted as he believed right. Yet now his actions shaped the future. They reminded dragons, humans, and all who heard the story that the smallest life could influence the greatest empires. Kalith nudged him, wings brushing lightly. The child-turned warrior chirped, as if to say that all this mattered. Arun smiled faintly, reaching down to touch the dragon's head. "We did it," he whispered. "We survived. And we changed something." News of the battle and of Arun's actions spread across the kingdoms. Humans were no longer seen as fragile or weak. Dragons spoke openly of the human who had stood among them, who had survived death, and who had led in courage. Mixed patrols of dragons and humans became common. Young dragons were taught the story of Arun Vos and Kalith as part of their education, not for their strength but for their spirit. Enemies continued to test the borders, believing the kingdoms would falter. Each time, Arun responded, not with fear, not with anger but with calm determination. He led humans and dragons alike, showing that courage could turn even hopeless odds into victory. His choices became lessons, his presence a shield. Every act, small or large, reminded others that bravery was not measured by fire or scale, but by standing when all else told you to fall. Years later, Arun and Kalith stood on a cliff overlooking the kingdoms. Ships moved across the sky, patrols crisscrossing the crystal spires, dragons and humans working together. The sun reflected off the scales of wings and armor alike, casting shadows that danced over the land. Arun looked at Kalith. "Do you remember the first time we faced the blades?" he asked quietly. Kalith chirped softly, eyes shining with memory. The dragon had grown, yes, but the bond between them remained, forged in fire, steel and choice. "They thought I would fail," Arun continued. "They thought I could not survive. But we did. And because of that, everyone here remembers something new. They remember that courage matters more than strength. They remember that choice can change everything." Kalith leaned closer, small wings brushing his side. Together, they watched the horizon, the kingdoms alive below them, buzzing with life and vigilance. The world was not perfect. Danger still lurked. But trust, respect, and courage had become stronger than fear. Humans and dragons stood together, not as master and subordinate, but as equals, united by the actions of one human who had refused to fall. In council chambers, in training grounds, in schools for young dragons, the story of Arun Vos was told. It was not a tale of fire or conquest. It was a tale of standing when all else tells you to run, of refusing to let fear dictate action, of protecting what matters even when death seems certain. Arun did not seek recognition. He did not ask for reward. Yet the kingdoms remembered him. They remembered a human who had faced impossible odds and survived. They remembered the courage of a man who had risked everything for a dragon child. They remembered a choice that had shifted the course of history. And so, long after the blades fell and the battle was done, the memory of Arun Vos and Kalith endured. They became more than legends. They became a lesson, a light, a standard. The kingdoms would pass the story down for generations, teaching that bravery is not measured by power, but by the will to stand, to protect, and to act when it matters most. Arun and Kalith stood together watching the skies. The wind carried voices, laughter, the hum of life across dragon and human alike. The human who had once faced 5 blades now stood among the greatest guardians, not as a warrior of fire, but as a beacon of courage. And the kingdoms remembered. For courage, for choice, for the act of standing when all else fails, had become the legacy of humanity among dragons. And nothing, not time, not fear, not even death could erase it.